The machine made a soft humming sound deep underground far below the dead surface of Earth, where no life had walked for thousands of years. Something was waking up. The year was 870,000 AD, and the galaxy had forgotten about the small blue planet that once held billions of people. In the darkness of the underground city, giant metal doors began to open with a slow grinding noise. Steam poured out from the opening chambers, filling the air with white mist. Inside the chambers, people lay sleeping. They had been sleeping for so long that dust from centuries had settled on the glass covers of their bedstay. Ho opened his eyes first. He was a tall man with strong shoulders and hands that showed years of hard work before the long sleep he had been a soldier, a leader of men in times of war. His eyes were sharp and quick to notice danger even after sleeping for almost 1,000,000 years. He sat up slowly in his chamber and looked around at the strange room filled with sleeping people. The air tasted strange and metallic, like old coins left in water for too long. Teho stood up on legs that felt weak and shaky. He had to hold on to the wall to keep from falling. His body felt different, lighter somehow, but also stronger than he remembered. The sleeping chamber was huge, bigger than any building he could remember from the old world. All around him, other chambers were opening. People were waking up slowly, rubbing their eyes and looking confused. Some were crying, others were laughing with joy, and many just sat in silence, trying to understand what was happening to them. The underground city stretched out in all directions with tunnels and rooms that seemed to go on forever. Teho heard footsteps behind him and turned to see a woman walking toward him. She had long black hair and eyes that looked very intelligent. Her name was Jiwoo, and she had been a scientist before the Great Sleep. Her job had been to study the stars and the space between worlds. Now she was looking at screens and buttons on the walls of the chamber. Jiwoo spoke in a voice that was soft but clear. The machines have been watching, she said. They have been recording everything that happened while we slept. The galaxy is not empty, Teho. There are others out there. Many others, and they think we are all dead. More people were gathering around them now. Men and women of all ages were coming out of their sleeping chambers. They wore simple white clothes that the machines had put on them during the long sleep. Some looked scared, others looked excited, but all of them looked to Teho and Jiwoo for answers. A young woman named Sujin joined them. She had been working with communication systems before the sleep. Her job was to talk to people far away using radio waves and computer signals. Now she was looking at displays that showed information from all over the Earth. The planet is alive, she said with wonder in her voice. There are cities like this one everywhere. Millions of people are waking up just like us. The three of them worked together to understand what the machines were telling them. The computers had been busy during the long sleep. They had watched the skies and listened to signals from space. They had recorded conversations between alien species and mapped their star systems. They had learned languages that no human had ever heard before. Ho felt his soldier instincts coming back to life as he learned about the galaxy. The aliens had formed something called the Galactic Federation. It was like a huge government that controlled thousands of worlds and millions of different species. Some of the aliens were peaceful and traded with each other. Others were warriors who conquered weaker species and took their worlds. Wu was excited by the scientific information. The aliens had technology that could travel between stars faster than light. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets and machines that could build cities in space. But as she studied their science, she realized something important. The aliens were not as advanced as they thought they were. The humans had been sleeping, but their machines had not stopped working. The automated systems had continued to develop new technology and improve old designs. The computers had been learning and growing smarter for almost 1,000,000 years. While the aliens thought they were the masters of the galaxy, human science had quietly surpassed them in many ways. Sujin made contact with other human settlements across the Earth. Every continent had underground cities filled with waking people. The total number was incredible. Over 2 billion humans had survived the long sleep. They had starships hidden in deep caves and manufacturing systems that could build anything they needed. Their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic. As more people woke up, they began to organize themselves into groups. Teho naturally became a leader, helping to coordinate between different settlements. Wu led the scientists who were studying the alien information. Sujin managed the communication networks that connected all the human cities together. The underground city was amazing beyond anything from the old world. The ceilings were so high. They seemed to touch the sky. Artificial suns provided light and warmth, while machines cleaned the air and provided fresh water. Gardens grew food using soil that had been kept pure during the long sleep. Transportation tubes moved people quickly between different sections of the city, but the most incredible discovery was the starships. The machines had built hundreds of vessels during the long sleep. Each ship was sleek and beautiful like a work of art, but also incredibly powerful. Their engines could travel faster than anything the aliens possessed. Their weapons could defend against any threat. Their computers could think and react quicker than any biological brain. As days passed and more humans woke up, they began to understand their situation. They were no longer the weak species that had once struggled to leave their home planet. They had become something new, something powerful. The galaxy thought humanity was extinct, but they were wrong. Humanity had been sleeping, but now they were awake and they were stronger than ever before. The question now was what to do with this power. Some humans wanted to hide and study the aliens from a distance. Others wanted to make contact and join the galactic community peacefully. A few suggested that humanity should take control of the galaxy and rule over the alien species. Tejo knew that whatever they decided would change the galaxy forever. The aliens had been living their lives thinking they knew everything about the universe. They were about to discover that they were very wrong. Humanity was back, and they brought with them technology and ideas that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The long sleep was over. The age of human awakening had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The alien ships came to Earth like metal birds flying through the darkness of space. They were huge vessels covered in lights and strange symbols that glowed with colors humans had never seen before. Admiral Veltar stood on the command bridge of the largest ship, looking at the small blue planet that was supposed to be dead. Veltar was tall and thin with skin that looked like silver metal. His people, the Krillians, had been exploring space for over 50,000 years. They were proud of their technology and their position as leaders in the Galactic Federation. When the strange signals started coming from Earth, he had volunteered to investigate. The signals were impossible according to everything the Federation knew about Earth. The planet had been surveyed many times over the centuries. Always the reports said the same thing: no life, no technology, no reason to visit the dead world. But now their instruments were detecting massive energy sources and complex communications coming from the surface on Earth. Hyun Woo was preparing for the most important meeting in human history. He had been chosen to represent all of humanity in their first contact with alien species. He was a calm man who spoke many languages and understood how to talk to people from different cultures. Now he would need those skills to talk to beings from different worlds. The human starship that carried Hyun Woo into space was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. It was smooth and white like a pearl from the ocean, but it moved through space faster than their sensors could track. Its energy signature was strange and powerful, making the alien instruments give readings that made no sense. When Hyun Woo's ship appeared next to the Federation fleet, Admiral Veltar felt his confidence shake. The human vessel was smaller than his flagship, but something about it made him nervous. It moved too smoothly and too quietly, like a predator hunting in the night. His weapons officer reported that their targeting systems could not lock onto the human ship. The first communication between the species was awkward and filled with confusion. Hyun Woo spoke through a translation device that the human computers had built by studying alien broadcasts. Admiral Veltar responded through his own translation system, but neither side was sure they were understanding correctly. Admiral Veltar asked the questions that all Federation species wanted answered. How had humans survived for so long? Why had they hidden from galactic civilization? What technology allowed them to build ships that seemed to ignore the laws of physics as the Federation understood them? Hyun Woo answered carefully, explaining that humans had not been hiding but sleeping. He described the Great Sleep and how human machines had continued working and learning during the long centuries. He was polite and respectful, but he also made it clear that humanity was not a weak species asking for help. Back on Earth, Ji Young was working day and night to understand alien cultures and languages. She had studied the recordings that human machines had made during the long Sleep now, she was trying to help Hyun-woo avoid misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. The aliens had very different ways of thinking and communicating. Some species valued strength above all else, others cared only about logic and facts. Few alien races seemed to think that any new species should automatically serve older and more established civilizations. Ji Young discovered that the Galactic Federation was not as peaceful as they claimed to be. Many species had been forced to join through conquest or economic pressure. The stronger races controlled the weaker ones and made all the important decisions. It was not a true federation, but more like an empire with many rulers on Earth. Dongmin was coordinating the global response to first contact as billions of humans learned that they were no longer alone in the universe. The reaction was mixed and intense. Some people were excited about meeting aliens and joining galactic civilization. Others were afraid that the aliens would try to conquer Earth or steal human technology. Many humans were angry when they learned about the Federation treatment of weaker species. The idea that powerful races could dominate others went against human values of fairness and equality. Some military leaders suggested that humanity should prepare for war in case the aliens proved hostile. Dongmin had to balance all these different opinions while making decisions that would affect the future of both humanity and the galaxy. He organized councils where people could voice their concerns and debate what humanity should do. He also made sure that Earth defenses were ready in case diplomatic contact turned violent. Meanwhile, more Federation ships were arriving at Earth as news of the discovery spread across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of different species came to see the impossible sight of a living human civilization. The space around Earth became crowded with alien vessels of every size and shape. Some aliens were friendly and curious, wanting to learn about human culture and technology. Others were suspicious and demanded that humans prove they were not a threat to galactic peace. A few species seemed to view humanity as potential slaves or servants who should be grateful for alien attention. The situation became more tense when several alien species began arguing among themselves about what to do with humanity. Some wanted to welcome humans as new members of the Federation. Others insisted that any new species should go through a long testing period before being accepted. Admiral Veltar found himself in the middle of these disputes. His job had been simple when he thought he was investigating natural phenomena. Now he was dealing with a diplomatic crisis that could affect the entire galaxy. He sent urgent messages back to Federation headquarters asking for instructions. The Federation Council met in emergency session on their capital world. Representatives from thousands of species debated and argued about the human situation. The meeting lasted for days as different factions tried to push their own agendas. Some species saw opportunity in the situation, while others saw only danger. During this time, human technology continued to amaze and worry the alien observers. Earth orbital platforms appeared seemingly from nowhere. Defensive systems activated that could protect the entire planet. Energy readings suggested that humans had access to power sources that Federation science said were impossible. Hyun-woo continued his diplomatic work, meeting with representatives from different alien species. He was always polite and reasonable, but he also made it clear that humanity would not accept being treated as inferior beings. He spoke of cooperation and mutual benefit while quietly demonstrating that humans were not helpless. The first major crisis came when a group of militant aliens demanded that humans surrender their advanced technology for study. They claimed it was for the good of the galaxy and that all species should share their scientific knowledge. Hyun-woo politely refused, explaining that humanity would be happy to trade and cooperate but would not give up their independence. This refusal shocked many aliens who were used to new species being grateful for any attention from the Federation. The idea that humans would negotiate as equals rather than beg for acceptance was something they had never encountered. Before, as tensions rose, both sides prepared for the possibility that first contact might end in conflict. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether humanity would join galactic civilization peacefully or whether the universe was about to witness the birth of a new kind of war. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test both human resolve and alien assumptions about power and dominance in the galaxy. The peaceful first contact that everyone had hoped for was beginning to look less and less likely with each passing day. The Federation fleet grew larger every day as more alien ships arrived to witness the impossible sight of living humans. Ships from hundreds of different worlds crowded the space around Earth, each one filled with beings who had grown up believing that humans were nothing but ancient history. Now they watched in amazement as Earth revealed secrets that challenged everything they thought they knew. Minho stood in the floating city of New Seoul, suspended 3 miles above the Korean peninsula. The city was a marvel of human engineering held in the sky by gravity control systems that the aliens could not understand. Buildings stretched upward like crystal towers, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of pure light. When the alien observers saw the floating cities, their instruments went wild. Energy readings showed power sources that should not exist according to Federation science. The cities were not held up by rockets or anti-gravity fields, but by something that bent space itself, making the massive structures weightless. Minho was Earth's chief scientist, a quiet man who had spent his life studying the deepest mysteries of the universe. Before the Great Sleep, he had been working on theories that most people thought were impossible. Now, those theories had become reality. While humanity slept, he welcomed a group of alien scientists to tour the floating city. The visitors included Kethral, a Tylorian physicist who had won the Federation highest scientific honors, and Zimpak, a Heridian engineer whose people were famous for building the largest structures in known space. Both aliens were confident that they would quickly understand human technology. Their confidence disappeared within the first hour. Minho showed them a simple manufacturing device that could take raw materials and build a starship. In less than 6 hours, the machine worked by manipulating matter at the molecular level, assembling atoms into any desired configuration. The aliens watched in stunned silence as metals and crystals flowed like water and shaped themselves into complex machinery. When Kethral asked how the device worked, Minho tried to explain but realized that the aliens lacked the basic scientific knowledge to understand. Human science had advanced so far during the long sleep that explaining it to Federation scientists was like trying to teach calculus to children who had not yet learned addition. The tour continued to an energy generation facility that gathered power from the quantum fluctuations of empty space itself. The facility was small, no larger than a house, but it produced more energy than the largest Federation power plants. The aliens could measure the energy output but could not detect any fuel source or reactor cores. Impact became frustrated when he could not find the power source for the facility. He had built fusion reactors that powered entire star systems, but this human device seemed to create energy from nothing. His instruments showed massive power generation but could not explain where the energy was coming from. Meanwhile, in the underground command center beneath Seoul, Eunji was revealing an even more shocking truth to Federation military observers. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had served as a tactical analyst before the Great Sleep. Now she held the rank of strategic defense coordinator, and she was about to show the aliens just how much humans knew about their so-called secret military capabilities. The command center walls lit up with displays showing the locations of every Federation military base within 50 light years. Troop movements, supply lines, and classified battle plans were laid out in perfect detail. The aliens realized with growing horror that Earth had been watching and recording everything they did for centuries. General Mortheka, a Krillian military commander who prided himself on tactical brilliance, stared at the displays showing his own secret preparations for a potential invasion of Earth. Every ship position, every supply cache, every communication between his officers had been monitored and recorded. The humans knew about military plans that he had not even shared with his own staff. G explained calmly that human automated systems had been observing galactic military activities as a matter of routine defense. The machines had cataloged the weapons capabilities of every Federation species, mapped their strategic weaknesses, and developed countermeasures for every known alien tactic. She showed them recordings of private conversations between Federation admirals, discussions that had taken place in supposedly secure locations far from Earth. The aliens realized that their most secret military communications had been intercepted and decoded by human machines they never knew existed. The demonstration continued with a display of human Defensive capabilities. Yunji activated a planetary shield system that surrounded Earth with an energy barrier capable of stopping any known weapon. The shield was invisible to normal sensors, but alien instruments could detect its incredible power. When General Morthak asked about human offensive capabilities, Yunji smiled politely and explained that humanity preferred peaceful solutions. She did mention, however, that the same technology used for planetary defense could be adapted for other purposes if necessary. The implication was clear but not threatening. Across the galaxy, Su Yung was working with alien diplomatic corps to help them understand the political implications of humanity awakening. She was a brilliant strategist who had studied the complex relationships between Federation species. Now she was helping alien leaders realize how much the galactic balance of power had shifted. The Federation was not a stable alliance as many beings believed. Instead, it was a careful arrangement of competing interests held together by mutual fear and economic necessity. The strongest species controlled resources and trade routes, while weaker civilizations provided labor and raw materials. Su Yung showed alien diplomats how human technology could change everything. If humans chose to share their manufacturing capabilities, weaker species could become economically independent. If humans provided defensive technology, smaller civilizations could resist domination by galactic bullies. The implications terrified the ruling species who had built their power on controlling others. They realized that human intervention could spark revolutions across the galaxy. As oppressed species gained the tools to fight for their freedom, news of human capabilities spread through the Federation like wildfire. Species that had never dared to challenge their masters began to whisper about the possibility of change. Worlds that had provided cheap labor for centuries started to dream of independence. The ruling council of the Federation met in continuous emergency session as they tried to understand what humanity awakening meant for their carefully constructed system of control. Some counselors argued for immediate military action to destroy Earth before human ideas could spread. Others insisted on negotiation and compromise. A few wise alien leaders began to realize that the old galaxy was ending. Whether through cooperation or conflict, humanity would reshape galactic civilization. Human technology was too advanced to ignore, and human ideas about equality and justice were too appealing to suppressed species. The Federation faced a choice they had never imagined. They could try to maintain their control through force, risking a war they might not win, or they could accept that the galaxy was changing and try to find their place in a new order where might did not automatically make right. As alien fleets continued to gather around Earth, both sides prepared for whatever would come next. The humans remained calm and diplomatic, but they also made it clear that they would not accept domination or control. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of every living being in the galaxy. The age of unchallenged alien supremacy was ending, and no one knew what would take its place. Commander Rathkul of the Valdorian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet that surrounded him stretch endlessly in all directions. 5,000 warships, the largest battle force ever assembled, floated in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready for war. The ships were black and angular like giant metal predators, built for one purpose: to destroy everything in their path. The Valdorians were the most feared military force in the galaxy. For over 20,000 years they had conquered world after world, building an empire that stretched across entire star systems. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe, and that weaker species existed only to serve their betters' wrath. Kul was a massive being covered in scales that looked like black armor. His people had evolved from predators, and they still thought like hunters. The idea that a single species on one world could challenge the might of the Valdorian Empire was impossible to accept. Something had to be done to put these upstart humans in their proper place. The plan was simple and brutal. The Valdorian fleet would jump into the Earth system and demonstrate their overwhelming firepower. They would not destroy the planet immediately, but would make it clear that they could do so at any moment. The humans would surrender their technology and submit to Valdorian rule, or they would be wiped from existence. Other Federation species watched nervously as the Valdorian war fleet prepared to depart. Many aliens secretly hoped that the humans would be humbled, but they also feared what would happen if the Valdorians succeeded. A victory over the mysterious humans would make the Valdorian Empire even more arrogant and dangerous on Earth. Hen was coordinating the planetary defense as human sensors detected the approaching threat. He was a calm man who had once served as a military planner, but he had never faced anything like the massive fleet. Now, heading toward Earth, his job was to protect billions of humans without starting a galactic war. The human response surprised everyone who was watching. Instead of panicking or scrambling to build defenses, Earth remained quiet and seemingly undefended. No human warships left the planet to meet the Valdorian fleet. No desperate calls for help were sent to potential allies. Human cities continued their normal activities as if nothing was happening. Children played in the floating parks while adults went about their daily work. The only sign that humans were aware of the approaching danger was a slight increase in the energy output from their planetary defense grid. When the Valdorian fleet arrived in the Earth system, Rathkul expected to see a planet in chaos. Instead, he found a world that seemed to be ignoring his presence. His communication officers tried to contact Earth, demanding immediate surrender, but received no response. The silence was more unnerving than any threat could have been. Rathkul decided to make a demonstration that would get the humans' attention. He ordered one of his smaller ships to fire a warning shot that would pass close to Earth without causing damage. The blast from the Valdorian plasma cannon was bright enough to be seen from the surface and powerful enough to destroy a moon. The energy beam raced toward Earth at incredible speed, but something impossible happened. As the blast approached the planet, it simply stopped. The beam of energy froze in space as if it had hit an invisible wall, then slowly faded away until nothing remained. Valdorian sensors went wild trying to understand what had happened. Their most powerful weapons had been stopped by something their instruments could not detect. The energy barrier around Earth was invisible and seemed to extend in all directions, creating a perfect sphere of protection around the planet. Rathkul ordered his fleet to attack with everything they had. Thousands of ships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bolts. The barrage was intense enough to shatter continents, but every single shot was absorbed harmlessly by the mysterious barrier. As the futile attack continued, something new appeared on Valdorian sensors. Small objects were emerging from Earth, moving toward the fleet at speeds that should have been impossible. The objects were no larger than fighter craft, but they moved through space like living things, dancing between the massive warships. Hyan watched the battle from the defense center deep beneath Seoul. The human response was precisely calculated and carefully controlled. Each defensive drone was programmed to disable rather than destroy, to show strength without unnecessary killing. The goal was to end the threat while proving that humans were not cruel conquerors. The Valdorian fleet discovered that their targeting systems could not lock onto the human drones. The small craft moved too quickly and unpredictably, weaving through weapons fire that should have destroyed them instantly. When the drones reached the alien ships, they did something that terrified the Valdorians more than any weapon could have. Instead of attacking the drones, simply touched the hull of each warship, and the mighty vessels stopped working. Engines shut down, weapons powered off, and life support systems switched to emergency backup. The proud Valdorian fleet was left floating helplessly in space, unable to fight or flee. Rathkul found himself trapped on a dead ship surrounded by the wreckage of his armada. Every system had failed simultaneously, and his engineering crews reported that they could not understand what had happened. The ships were undamaged but completely powerless, as if some invisible force had simply turned them off. Then the human ships appeared. Sleek white vessels emerged from Earth space, moving with grace and purpose. They were beautiful rather than threatening, looking more like works of art than weapons of war. Each human ship was tiny compared to the Valdorian battleships, but their presence filled the enemy with dread. Kyung Mi spoke for humanity as the rescue operation began. She was a diplomatic advisor who understood that how humans treated their defeated enemies would determine how the galaxy viewed them. Her voice was broadcast to every disabled Valdorian ship, offering help rather than threats. The message was simple and clear: human rescue teams would board the disabled ships to provide emergency aid and Repairs no Valdorian would be harmed, and all prisoners would be treated with respect the mighty empire that had come to conquer. Earth was now dependent on human mercy for survival. The rescue operation that followed amazed observers throughout. The Galaxy human teams worked efficiently to repair alien ships and tend to injured crew members. They provided food, water, and medical supplies while treating their former enemies with kindness and professional respect. Within hours, the entire Valdorian fleet was operational again, but now they understood the true scope of human power. The humans could have destroyed every ship and killed every crew member. Instead, they had chosen to show mercy while demonstrating capabilities that made resistance. Impossible news of the battle spread across the galaxy in minutes. Species that had lived in terror of Valdorian aggression suddenly saw hope for a different future. The empire that had seemed unstoppable had been defeated in minutes by a human force that never tried to kill a single enemy. The political implications were enormous. Smaller species began to whisper about resistance, while powerful empires realized that the old rules no longer applied. Human technology had changed the balance of power in ways that no one had imagined possible. Rathkul returned to his home world carrying news that would shake the Valdorian Empire to its foundations. The humans were not just another species to be conquered, they were something entirely new in galactic history. They possessed power that could crush any enemy, but chose to use it with restraint and wisdom. The galaxy would never be the same again. The age of conquest through superior firepower was ending, and a new era was beginning, where strength would be measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the wisdom to protect and preserve life. Human awakening had changed everything, and every species in the galaxy would have to decide how to respond to this new reality. BOREM stood in the Grand Trading Hall of Kepler Station, a massive space station that orbited a binary star system at the crossroads of major trade routes. The station had been built by the Hegemony Corporation, one of the most powerful trading organizations in the galaxy, but now it buzzed with activity unlike anything seen before. Human trade representatives had arrived at stations and trading posts across Federation space, carrying samples of technology that seemed too good to be true. Manufacturing devices that could build anything from raw materials, medical equipment that could cure diseases thought incurable, and energy generators that made power cheaply available to everyone. BOREM was Earth Chief Trade Coordinator, a woman who understood both business and diplomacy. She had studied the galactic economy during the long sleep and knew exactly how human technology could help while avoiding the mistakes that might destabilize entire civilizations. The aliens who came to see human products could hardly believe what they witnessed. A simple device no larger than a briefcase could take asteroid rock and turn it into pure metals, tools, or even food. The process was clean, quiet, and incredibly efficient, requiring no factories or industrial facilities. Skef Tall, a Zeridian merchant who had traded across the galaxy for 3 centuries, watched in amazement as BOREM demonstrated a medical scanner that could diagnose and treat diseases in minutes. The device was smaller than his hand, but more powerful than the largest hospital ships in his fleet. The economic implications were staggering. Human technology could make every world self-sufficient, ending the dependency relationships that powerful species used to control weaker ones. Planets that had been forced to export raw materials for processing could now manufacture finished goods themselves. But BOREM was careful to introduce changes. Gradually, she understood that too much disruption too quickly could cause economic collapse and social chaos. Human technology was shared through carefully managed trade agreements that helped rather than harmed existing galactic communities. Meanwhile, Sangho was working on cultural exchange programs that were having an even more profound impact on galactic civilization. He was a patient man who had spent his life studying how different peoples could work together. Now he was helping alien species discover new ways of thinking about old problems. The first breakthrough came when human scientists began working with Thrakari researchers on a problem that had puzzled alien minds for centuries. The Thrakari were brilliant mathematicians, but they had been stuck trying to solve equations that described the behavior of dark matter. Human researchers approached the problem from a completely different angle. Instead of trying to force the mathematics to fit preconceived ideas, they let the numbers tell them what dark matter actually was. The solution came within days and opened up entirely new fields of physics. Young Su led the scientific collaboration efforts, organizing research teams that mixed human and alien scientists. The results were extraordinary breakthroughs in medicine, physics, and engineering came almost daily as different ways of thinking combined to solve problems that had seemed impossible. A Vraxian biologist named Kethmar had spent her entire career trying to understand why certain diseases could not be cured. Human medical researchers suggested looking at the problem as an information disorder rather than a biological one. The new approach led to treatments that saved millions of lives. The collaborative research also revealed uncomfortable truths about Federation history. Human historians working with alien records discovered evidence of systematic suppression of scientific development. Several powerful species had deliberately kept weaker civilizations from advancing technologically. Kyung was analyzing these historical records and coordinating with reform-minded aliens who wanted to change how the Federation operated. She was a political scientist who understood how governments worked and how they could be changed through peaceful means. The evidence was overwhelming. The Federation was not a voluntary alliance as claimed, but a system designed to keep certain species in power while exploiting others. Trade agreements were structured to benefit the strong while keeping the weak dependent. Military protection was provided only to species that accepted subordinate status. Reform movements began sprouting on worlds across the galaxy. Species that had never been allowed to participate in Federation governance started demanding representation. Small civilizations that had been forced to provide cheap labor began organizing strikes and protests. Established powers fought back, trying to maintain their control through economic pressure and military threats, but human technology was making their old methods ineffective. Species with access to human manufacturing systems could no longer be controlled through resource scarcity. Jin was working behind the scenes to coordinate intelligence operations that supported peaceful reform movements. She was a master of information warfare who understood how knowledge could be more powerful than weapons. Human data networks were quietly providing secure communications for democracy activists across the galaxy. Intelligence operations revealed the full scope of oppression within the Federation. Billions of sentient beings lived under governments they had never chosen. Following laws they had no voice in making. Their labor and resources were extracted to support the luxury lifestyles of ruling species, but the intelligence network also identified allies among the established powers. Many individuals from dominant species were horrified to learn about the true nature of their government. Some alien leaders had assumed the Federation was actually fair and were shocked by evidence of systematic exploitation. A secret coalition began forming composed of reform-minded beings from every level of galactic society. Human coordinators helped organize secure meetings where aliens could plan peaceful changes to their government. The coalition included everyone from rebel leaders to high-ranking Federation officials. The movement grew slowly but steadily as more species gained access to human technology, and information worlds that had been powerless for millennia suddenly had the tools they needed to resist oppression. The balance of power was shifting in ways that terrified the old rulers. Emergency meetings were held in Federation capital as the ruling council struggled to respond to the growing unrest. Some members wanted to use military force to crush the reform movements. Others argued for compromise and gradual change. A few even suggested that complete government restructuring might be necessary. The crisis deepened when entire star systems began declaring independence from Federation authority. These worlds had gained enough technological and economic independence through human trade that they no longer needed Federation protection or support. Human diplomats worked carefully to prevent the situation from exploding into violence. Sang Ho and his cultural teams helped mediate disputes between different species, while Theo Ram ensured that economic changes happened gradually enough to avoid chaos. The old Federation was dying, but what would replace it remained unclear. Some species wanted complete independence, while others preferred reformed central government. Human advisors helped different groups understand their options while making it clear that the choice belonged to the galactic community. As the reform movement gained momentum, it became obvious that the galaxy was approaching a critical decision point. The old system of domination and exploitation could not survive, but creating something better would require cooperation between species that had been enemies for millennia. The humans had awakened more than just themselves. They had awakened the entire galaxy to possibilities that had seemed impossible. The question now was whether all these different species could work together to build a better future, or whether the changes would tear galactic civilization apart. Time was running out for peaceful solutions as conservative forces within the Federation began planning desperate measures to maintain their control. The next phase of the crisis would determine whether the galaxy moved toward greater freedom and equality or descended into the largest war in its history. The Federation Council chamber had never seen anything like the chaos that erupted when Admiral Corvex announced his plan to save galactic civilization. He was a massive Drachnary with scales that gleamed like black metal and eyes that burned with the fire of absolute conviction. His species had ruled their sector for over 100,000 years, and he refused to watch their power crumble. Standing before representatives from thousands of worlds, Corvex declared that the human threat had to be eliminated before it destroyed everything the Federation had built. His words were calm, but his meaning was clear. Earth would be destroyed, and any species that supported the humans would be crushed without mercy. The announcement split the council chamber as species chose sides. Some alien representatives cheered and pledged their fleets to the cause. Others sat in stunned silence, realizing that civil war was now inevitable. A few brave delegates stood up to speak against the plan, but they were shouted down by supporters of the military solution on Earth. High Jin was monitoring the situation through the intelligence networks that humans had quietly built across the galaxy. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent her career understanding how information could be used as a weapon. Now she was coordinating the most important intelligence operation in galactic history. The human response to the coup attempt had been planned for months, as intelligence analysts predicted that conservative forces would eventually resort to violence rather than waiting to be attacked. Humanity had spent months building secret alliances with oppressed species across the galaxy. As Admiral Corvex began mobilizing his forces, something unexpected happened. Worlds that had been silent for centuries suddenly came alive with activity. Species that the ruling classes had dismissed as powerless began coordinating resistance movements that stretched across entire star systems. The Milani people, who had been forced to work in Federation mining operations for over 50,000 years, suddenly stopped production and declared independence. Their homeworld was protected by human defensive technology that made invasion impossible. The ruling species, who depended on Milani labor, faced immediate shortages of essential materials on the industrial world of Zarian. The Kelthera workers who built Federation starships walked away from their factories. Human manufacturing systems allowed them to become economically independent overnight. The sophisticated warships that Federation military forces depended on could no longer be produced or repaired. Wu Jin was coordinating the most ambitious democratic process in galactic history, as billions of beings across thousands of worlds participated in a referendum that would determine the future of their government. He was a quiet man who had studied political systems his entire life, but had never imagined organizing an election on such a massive scale. The referendum was simple but revolutionary. Every sentient being in the galaxy would have the opportunity to vote on whether they wanted to continue living under the current Federation system or create a new government. Based on equality and representation, the voting would be completely secure using human encryption technology that could not be hacked or manipulated. Admiral Corvex and his allies tried to prevent the vote through military force, but discovered that their power was not as absolute as they had believed. Worlds that had always submitted to Federation authority now had human defensive systems that made conquest impossible. The coup forces found themselves fighting an enemy they could not locate or defeat. Every time they moved against a rebel world, they discovered that the population had been evacuated to safety using human transportation technology that could move entire cities in hours. The voting continued despite the military chaos, as species that had never been allowed to choose their own destiny finally had a voice in galactic government. Beings who had lived their entire lives under alien rule cast ballots in elections that their grandparents could never have imagined. The results were overwhelming. Over 90% of galactic citizens voted to replace the Federation with a new system of government that would give every world and every species equal representation. The old empire, built on domination and exploitation, was rejected by the very people it claimed to protect, but the victory came with a price. Admiral Corvex and the most extreme conservative forces refused to accept defeat. They retreated to heavily fortified worlds and declared that they would continue fighting until the natural order was restored. Their resistance threatened to turn the galactic civil war into a conflict that could last for centuries. The solution came from an unexpected source, the Valdorian Empire, whose defeat by human forces had started the chain of events leading to the current crisis. Offered to mediate between the warring factions. Commander Rathkul, who had once tried to conquer Earth, now served as an advocate for peaceful resolution. The negotiations were complex and difficult, as species that had been enemies for millennia tried to find common ground. Human diplomats helped facilitate the discussions, but made it clear that the final decisions belonged to the galactic community itself. Slowly, painfully, a new structure began to emerge. The Galactic Confederation would replace the old Federation with a government truly based on representation and consent. Every world would have a voice in decisions that affected them. Military force could only be used for defense, never for conquest or domination. The transformation was not immediate or easy. Centuries of oppression and mistrust could not be healed overnight. Some species struggled to accept equality with peoples they had always considered inferior. Others found it difficult to take responsibility for governing themselves after generations of being ruled by others. But the changes were real and growing. Human technology continued to spread across the galaxy, but now it was shared through voluntary cooperation rather than imposed by forced. Trade relationships became partnerships between equals, while scientific collaboration produced discoveries that benefited everyone. Earth itself underwent its own transformation as billions of humans who had awakened to find themselves alone in the universe discovered that they were now part of a galactic community beyond their wildest dreams. The planet that had once been considered dead became the beating heart of an interstellar civilization. The floating cities above Earth expanded to accommodate alien visitors and immigrants who came to study human technology and culture. The underground cities that had sheltered humanity during the long sleep became centers of learning, where beings from across the galaxy worked together on projects that would have been impossible before. Years passed, and the new galactic order grew. Stronger species that had once lived in fear of their neighbors now cooperated on massive projects that improved life for everyone. Former enemies worked side by side to explore distant galaxies and solve the greatest mysteries of the universe. Humanity had awakened from their long sleep to find a galaxy ruled by fear and oppression, but they had not conquered that galaxy or imposed their will upon it. Instead, they had given every species the tools and knowledge needed to choose their own destiny. The age of domination was ending, and the age of cooperation had begun. The story of humanity awakening had become the story of an entire galaxy awakening to possibilities that had always existed but had never been allowed to flourish. It was not the beginning of human rule, but the beginning of true galactic civilization, where every voice mattered and every being had the chance to reach their full potential. In the end, the greatest human achievement was not their advanced technology or their military power, but their ability to inspire others to believe that a better future was possible. The galaxy that had once seemed doomed to eternal conflict had found a path toward peace, prosperity, and hope for all its children.